The Naviate Accelerate Export-Import feature allows you to export parameter data from Revit to an Excel document, modify that data in Excel, then update by importing the data changes back into Revit for a full round-trip data service. The Naviate Export-Import feature is located within the Link and Sync tab of the Collaboration group. First, go to the Link and Sync tab. Then of the Export-Import group of the Link and Sync tab, you will see Export-Import. Let's first look at the dialog. You'll see 3 tabs at the top. The first option is to export a selection. You can pre-select elements within your Revit model and export only the elements that you select. Then you have Export Schedule. This will allow you to export any Revit pre-created Revit schedules. Lastly is the Import tab. This is where you will select an Excel file that was created from exporting from one of these options to import back in for that round-trip data. Let's first look at exporting a selection. We can either simply select elements within the Revit model, or we can use one of our Accelerate selection-based features like Live Selection to more easily select the elements and categories we want to export. Let's say I want to export doors, floors, walls, and rooms. Then I can pull up my Naviate Export Import, and it'll show me all of the elements that I have selected. At the top, we have a few settings. One is that you can export 1 tab per category or 1 tab per family. We're going to export 1 tab per category. We'll then be able to use a parameter filter to specify which parameters of these elements we want exported. By default, it selects all parameters associated with those elements and will export them to this Excel file. We get a preview of what our export will look like and what parameters will be exported. The first few parameters are always going to be exported as they are used to identify those elements. We can use the buttons or arrows below to switch between the different tabs and see what elements are being exported and the data being exported with them. Now let's use our parameter filter to filter exactly what parameters we want exported. Since we don't have any saved filters, we will go and create a new filter. This will open up a new dialog. First, I can select the categories that I want to select parameters to filter, then the families, and then I can come in and specify which parameters I want exported. We also have a button at the bottom to toggle on only showing common parameters. Maybe I want to export the comments and the area. I can either double click or use the arrow to move the parameters that I want exported to this box here. Let's choose a few other, maybe type parameters. I can use the filter at the top to search any other parameters that I want exported. That looks good for now. We can then save this filter to use for the future. In the future, we'll be able to see all save filters and choose from our save filters here. We can then choose to export our type parameters, and since we do have type parameters selected, I will leave this checked on. We can also choose to hide the summary and export catalog from our Excel file, but for this example, I want to show you all that will be exported. Once we have all our settings set up, simply hit export and it will export the file. Once it's done exporting, it will ask you to open the exported file. Once the file is opened, we will see what is exported. First, we have the export summary in its own sheet. This will show us all the elements that we exported. It will also tell us the format and the model that we exported from, and some other information like how much instances, the type name, and the family name, and the category. In the export catalog, this is detailing all of the parameters that were exported. They were instant or type, and all the information about those parameters. Then we have our type parameters tab. This is a tab in which you will edit the type parameters that were exported. We'll come back to edit some of these type parameters in a moment. Then we have a tab for each of the categories that were exported. This is where we're able to edit the instance parameters of those elements. You'll also be able to see some color coding that will identify the different parameters that were exported. The gray values are all the data that is required to do the round-trip data exchange and cannot be modified. The bluish colors are the type parameters or read-only parameters that either can't be modified in this tab or must be modified in the type parameters tab. Whatever is in white are the parameters that are instanced that you can modify. You can see that again for every category that we exported. So let's go ahead and modify some data for our doors. And let's also go ahead and update some type parameters. For the type parameters, you'll be able to identify the type parameter by its name here for each type that was exported. So let's change the single flush, type comments, and type mark. I'll, again, just for this example, change it here so that we're able to identify what was modified. Once we've modified all of our data, we can save it, then come back to our export import feature and navigate to the import tab. This will allow us to select that Excel file. It'll give us a preview of what was updated or modified so that we can review it. Then we can hit import. Here we have a single flush 36 by 84. We can see in the comments that it was updated to the word update as we did in the Excel document. And if we check the type parameters, we can also see that the type comments and the type mark were also updated. Now let's take a look at schedules. You can see I have a lot of different types of schedules in my project, from building component schedules, key schedules, material takeoff schedules, note blocks, and sheet lists. Let's see how Naviate Accelerates Export Import handles these schedules. It will list out all available schedules that we can export. There's two options at the top. You can export for re-import, which allows for that data exchange, or you can just export only. This will not be able to give you the capabilities to do the data exchange, but just export the schedule out to an Excel file as is. This gives you more flexibility to choose from all different types of schedules, as you see here. The export for import does not allow you to export key schedules or material schedules when we have the as in Revit option selected. We can also switch when exporting for re-import to a simplified version. This will simplify it, and it won't be sorted or look like your Revit schedule, but will have all the elements and data that was in your schedule. Again, this does give you the option to select all those different schedule types, from building component schedules to key schedules, materials, takeoff schedules, note blocks, and sheet lists. For this example, we will export for re-import as in Revit, and we will simply export our building component schedule for our rooms. We again have two other options here. We can export schedules as separate Excel files. You do have the ability to select multiple Excel files to export. If you select multiple Excel files, you can either export these schedules into one Excel file, or check this on to export them into separate Excel files. We will just export our one room finish schedule. And then we can also hide the summary and export catalog. But again, I just want to show you everything, so I'll keep that checked off. Let's export. First, let's take a look at that schedule in Revit. We can see it here. And then let's take a look at it in Excel. So just like in our previous example, we have the export summary that will show the Excel schedules, the category, tell you the model it was exported from, and the format. It'll provide the export catalog, which will outline all the parameters and what those parameters are. If you did have any type parameters in your schedule, you will have them listed out in the type parameters tab. I do not have any type parameters in this schedule. And then you get the last tab, which is the schedule. If you had multiple schedules that were exported to this single Excel file, you will have a tab for each schedule. As you can see, this schedule looks exactly like my Revit schedule. Now I can go ahead and make any data changes I want, use Excel's functionality to copy, paste, fill in any of the information that I need. Once I'm happy with the data changes, I can come back to Revit, come back to the Export Import feature, come to my Import tab, select that Excel file. Again, I get a preview so I can check the data and then simply import it. Again, it will update all my data as per the changes in the Excel document. And that is the Naviate Accelerate Export Import feature.